Hello, everybody, and welcome to the YouTube Model Builders Arduino workshop with Chris of MRL Trains. I want to say go to YouTubeModelBuilder.com. There you can check the schedules for the Tuesday and the Wednesday shows and the Saturday show. Tuesday and Wednesday are 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The Saturday and the Thursday shows are at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And also be sure to click on the e-magazine and sign up for email notifications when it comes out. JD and his team do a great job of making that a free magazine and free of ads and full of really good content. So be sure to check it out. Sign up for a notification. We got one coming out next month, so you know it's going to be a good one. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Chris for the Arduino workshop. There you go, Chris.
Okay, thanks, Johnny. Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to another Arduino workshop. Tonight we're going to play around with RFID, which is, I don't know if you have one in your kit that you bought, it should look something like this. It's the big white thing is like your standard hotel room card. And then there's a little blue key fob that also has an RFID chip in it. And then the big one is actually the reader. So we'll try and goof around and see what we can do. As you can see, the bag is still sealed. I haven't opened it and tried it yet, so we're going to fumble our way through and see what we can do with this. So, but I just talk about real quick what we're going to do in the near future. I have to check the schedule, but we're going to be going to once a month instead of twice a month for the summer. As you can see, things have slowed down. Hangouts aren't as full during the summer because everybody's busy, and including myself. So I think if we're scheduled for the third week of July, and don't quote me on that, then I'm going to try and post something up in the next week. We'll start building our speedometer. So I'll try and get the parts list posted. That'll give you a better part of a month to order and get your parts. And then, and if it's the first week, which Johnny is now telling me it is, then we'll probably pick one other. That's just coming up in 2 weeks, real quick. Not enough to get our parts, so we'll experiment with something else, and then start our speedometer in August. So really looking forward to that, and I know a lot of other people are. In fact, we had MHO Junction. He actually went and built one. If you look on the Google Plus page for YouTube model builders, he's actually got a working prototype that he's going to try and install on the layout. So that'll be great, because then we'll have a expert that can help us along as we work through it. Somebody who's actually done it. So I'll go ahead and switch my camera, and let's take a look at what we got here. So first thing I'm going to do is a classic unboxing. We'll call it an unbagging instead. So I'm just going to take my scissors and cut this bag open for the first time and see what we have in there. If you look on here, it's, if I can get it to focus, it says RFID RC522. Now, in my research that I did, that seems to be a very common RFID reader that you go out buy cheaply on eBay, Amazon, any of the sites where you can buy the cheap Arduino accessories. So this is actually the reader. Then you'll take your tag and just hold it over the antenna, so to speak. See where it looks like that? That's actually an antenna of sorts. And inside here is a coil of wire that the two of them together, you get close enough in proximity, then it'll trigger it. And the same thing, like this is your standard hotel type key card, only it would have printing on it. If you hold it up to a bright light and look, you'll actually see there's a thin coiled wire in there. And that's the same thing, you just hold it up. So inside your gate pass at work or your hotel room, whatever it is, there's going to be a card like this, and then your cards that you read. So I was thinking some potential uses for this on the layout would be from anything from throwing a turnout. You could give each of your operators a tag like this along with their throttle. They could just walk up, have some of these hidden behind the fascia where you just walk up and hold it at a certain spot on the fascia and the turnout would throw. Or you could embed it in the scenery, just hold it next to the turnout, however you cared to do it. You could use it to trigger sounds, turn on building lighting, potentially even turn on your entire layout. If you remember a show or two ago, we worked with relays that allow you to turn on accessories that have a whole lot more voltage, like your whole layout. You could turn on the room lights, you could turn on the layout itself, turn on your DCC system, whatever it is you care to do would be another way to do it. Hey, you could even put badge access on your door, so on operations night, only the guys that have one of these can get in. Good way to keep away the guys that just come to distract everybody else who comes to operate. So anyways, so in my looking around, I'm going to do a quick screen share now and show you what I found that we're going to try and do tonight. Share my screen, share full, and switch. What I found that I think we're going to try tonight was from a website called randomnerdtutorials.com. Up here is the link in my browser. Hopefully you can all read that. If not, it's the 3 words all together, randomnerdtutorials.com, and then /security-access-using-MFRC 522-RFID read. Oh my God, it's just going on and on. Anyways, see if you can find that. I'm going to just strip this off and see if we can do it the easy way. Go to randomnerdtutorials.com. Let's see, projects. Let's see here. Not seeing it right off top. If somebody can find it and post it up in the chat room, that would be great. Connie, let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to go back. You can read. Oh, no, it's not going to go back. There it is. Otherwise, just try Googling Random Nerd Tutorials RFID, and I'm sure you'll find it, because I just did a Google search for Arduino RFID tutorial, and this is what was one of the ones closer to the top of the page. So while you look for that, I'm going to start just showing you the web page and explaining a little bit about it. Here, RFID means radio frequency identification. Uses electromagnetic fields to transfer data over short distances. RFID is useful to identify people, to make transactions. There's a lot of things you're probably using it for these days. If you didn't know what RFID was, you'll realize now that you see what it is that you use that quite often probably. I know I have a badge for work that I use to get in through the gate and other things, and that's RFID. So here's a kind of a picture of it. It says it's a 2-way transmitter receiver, and then you have to have a reader, which is this guy right here. So as it loads, nope, never mind. Let's go into an eBay site. So those 3 components that I showed you are basically all you need to get started from what I've been reading. And as you scroll down the page here a little more, it kind of shows us how to wire it up. But before we get there, it says you'll need an RFID library. So what I'm going to do first is download the RFID library. And hopefully I remember how to load one after I download it, because it's been a while. If not, I know Andy or Dave will jump in and help me out here. So I clicked on the link, and let's see. If you look down at the bottom of my screen, it downloaded a zip file. If I do recall correctly, you basically move this to your Arduino folder, the zip file. Does that sound right, Andy?
Yeah, you could drop it. You have a library folder. I use my library manager, but get Arduino to deal with where that's stored at. But you'll have a library folder in there. See that libraries folder right there in your Arduino? Yep. You could drop it in there. And then there's a libraries manager in Arduino where you could open it up and check it and stuff. But
all right, so if I go back to that, now I'm gonna have to go to my downloads, I guess. So, yeah. So hopefully we'll. Which one it was? Here we go, RFID master. So I'm just going to grab that and.
You want to extract it into the directory as well.
Right, I'll take it up to the Arduino library and extract it.
Yep.
Rid of the zip file. That's kind of how just kind of the way I work. So what I did is I'm going to paste it in here. Gonna double click it to take a look inside it first. I always like to do that before I extract them, so no nasties pop out at you. So it looks like it's probably pretty good. So go back to thing is really slow tonight again because I got all this stuff open. Apologize for that. So I'm just going to right click and extract it here. There we go. I can close this, close that. I also had my Arduino IDE open, so if you haven't opened that yet, go ahead and open that. You'll need to do that to load the library.
You use the library manager? Is that what I use the library manager under, let's see, it's under, close this,
include library.
Yeah, under include library,
so
manage library.
Under Sketch, yep, under Sketch, include library, and then manage libraries. Or you can add a zip library if it was already zipped, but.
And it will automatically download many of them for you. If you just search for something you're looking for up there, you can search for that little thing and it'll automatically let you download them a lot of times. Not every library.
So actually just putting it in that folder though is sufficient until you load a sketch and ask to load that library, right?
Yep, put in that folder, it will pick it up as well. This is more or less a way to automate the downloading of it, but you could do it manually and throw in that folder, same job.
Okay. Yeah, because what I should be able to do now is go into here and see examples. And it should have loaded probably way down at the end here. Or do I have to do an add library? It's been so long since I've done this that.
Have you reopened? Have you closed out of Arduino?
Oh, yeah. Good call. So yep. Because I had this open already, I'm going to have to close down, reopen. So in the meantime, while we wait for that to reopen, I'm just going to scroll down a little. So once it kind of gives you the instructions. Whoops, what did I do there? Unzip the RFID, install it in your library in your Arduino IDE, and restart your IDE. So if I would have read that, I'd have been good. The next thing is the pin wiring. And when I bring my camera back on, so I'm just going to double check. Here we go. So now let's take a look. We've got examples, built-in libraries, examples for any board. Yeah, I still don't see it on here.
Scroll down just a little bit more. It should be under your custom libraries.
Yeah, you have that little down arrow there. Click the down arrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing, and it's really not doing anything.
Okay, so I just installed that library myself, but what I did is I went to the library manager, searched RFID, clicked install. I didn't even have to restart Arduino or anything. It just was there.
All right, so walk us through that real quick. Go to
Tools, library. Oh, no, sorry. Sketch, add library, wherever you were. That include library right there.
Yep.
And manage libraries. And then just search for RFID. There'll be a filter search over to the top right hand corner up there because there's a tremendous number of libraries. Is that the one you just installed already?
Now this, I don't think this is the one.
Well,
So that's why I'm not seeing it, because it's not finding it.
What I got about change your type from recommended as well. I don't know what that does because I wasn't using that. Yeah, see, I got a bunch of choices.
Yeah, so this MFRC 522.
Yep.
Right here. That's the one. So install. So this is a different way. I've never done it before.
It's
good to learn this.
I just like that it does it automatically and you don't have to restart or anything. And I'll take the easy way every time I can.
In addition, I think any of the libraries that are listed in here are probably more vetted than some that may not be in there.
Yeah.
They're more common,
So
more
now
popular.
you see, yep, I agree. So now you see down at the bottom, this new one was added in, MFRC 522. If you remember, that's kind of what it said on my chip, only it said RC 522, but the MFRC 522 is this very common RFID reader chip. So any library that's for an RC or an MFRC 522 should work. Now you can see there's all kinds of goodies in here. So maybe we can even find us a nice little sketch to use, like access control. I'm guessing that's for a door. Change UID, dump info. I bet you this dump info probably just goes right to the, that'd probably be a good sketch, probably similar to the one I was going to do anyways. So maybe we'll skip that website in case guys aren't able to find it. Let's just take a look at this built-in the library.
I did paste the link to that in the community, but
oh, thank you.
In the chat. But
so here it says this is an MFRC 522 library example. When the Arduino and the MFRC 522 module are connected, load this sketch, then verify, compile, and upload it. To see the output, use Tools, Serial Monitor. When you present a PICC, and that's your RFID tag or card, at a reading distance, the serial output will show ID, UID, type, and any data blocks it can read.
Awesome.
So this is a very simple way to test and see if it's working. It's not going to do anything at this point except write something to the serial monitor, but for ease of use, I think that's all we really need to get started. So let's give it a shot. The first thing I'm going to do is go back and we'll wire up our Arduino, and I will use this website for that since we have it, and I still have it up and running. So as you can see, as you scroll down a little more, there's a very simple fritzing diagram. This thing only takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wires, basically. So using this fritzing diagram, let's go ahead and try and connect it. And what I'll do is I'll leave the diagram up, talk you through it as I'm building it, and then show you at the end. So there's one important thing I've read in a couple places, and I'm sure it'll say it here if I look carefully enough. Thing about these is they run, yeah, here it is. Caution, you must power this device to 3.3 volts. If most of the sketches we've been doing all these times have been running off of 5 volts, but if you look at your Arduino Uno, and just stop sharing for a second so that you can see it. I'm going to point this out to you real quick. Did it stop sharing?
Yep.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I just wasn't on the right screen. So don't think you're going to be able to read this unless I can get it to focus, but basically right here at the end of my wire is typically is where your 5-volt connection is. Right next to it, if you look careful, you'll see a 3.3 volt. That's the one we want to use for this sketch, not the 5 volts. So you can plug in your power like through your USB or even through your auxiliary power jack right there, but the power that's going to the RFI, make sure it's in the 3.3 volt like that. So now I guess we can either, I'll go back to sharing and we'll just walk through the fritzing sketch. But that was an important point I remember reading, and I wanted to point that out before we got too far. That's one thing that varies a little bit from what we usually do, so it's worth pointing out. So now the next wire, and actually it's hard to tell on here, but if we go back up, it tells us right here, pin SDA goes to digital 10. So if you look on your RFID card, oh, you know what I didn't do? I got to show you this. I'm going to stop sharing again because this is bad on me here. You see my card? What am I going to connect to?
Oh, you haven't soldered your...
Yeah. See these little header pins that came with it? It gave me 2 different ones. It gave me a straight through header pin. And it also gave me the 90-degree one. So
what I'm going to do... You can tack those up in probably a minute or two while talk us through what you're doing or something, I'd say, if you've got an iron close.
The other thing you can do, I'm going to try and do, is just MacGyver this one.
As long as you put a little pressure on it. When you put that pin up in there, it'll have a contact in there. A lot of times, if you just put it up in there and make sure it's racked a little to one side, most of the time it gets contact.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my 90-degree one, as you can see, put the 90-degree header pins on there, and I'm just going to stand it up on my breadboard and let the weight of it against those pins do the work for me. I think if I don't mess with it too much, it should stay pretty good. I'm just going to tip it for now so you can see it. But if you're working along with one of these kits, and you know, something I didn't manage to do was realize that I was going to have to solder those. So I think we can get away with that and make enough contact for now, so if we're not moving it around all over the place. Another thing you could maybe do is take it off of there and put the straight through pins in and try that, just laying it down on there. But or you could go ahead and heat.
How flat is it on the back? Maybe sandwich it between that and the pins.
Well, it's just right now it's basically hanging. It's basically hanging on the pins, so the weight of the board is doing the work right now, holding it tight against the pins. So if you guys have a little time, go ahead and fire up your soldering iron and solder it on. I'm not going to, so that I can keep the show going, but I would recommend doing that if you can. I'm just going to move this over a little bit so that I can have room to stick my wires in there. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to find one of these pins is marked SDA. And boy, this one is printed tiny, so I got to really look careful. Oh, there it is. Happens to be the very furthest one to my left, or where I'm tapping my finger, that side of the board. So I'm going to run a wire.
Hey, Chris, read through
my diagram.
Read through those for me once. Are they SDA in order?
SDA, SCK, Mossy, MISO, IRQ, ground or GND, RST, and 3.3 volt.
Good. Coincidentally, it lines up with the chart. So on the web page.
Okay.
The web page from the top to the bottom is that same order.
Okay, so I'm going to we'll start with SDA is way on the left, and it's going to end up going to digital pin 10. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back. Okay, make sure I'm on screen. There we go. So I'll go ahead and plug that into 10. SCK, which should be the next one, and when I look on mine, it is. So I'll put that in the breadboard, and then that one is going to digital pin 13. I have to grab a different wire. That's not the right. Find a male to male here. So SCA, or SCK, I'm sorry, to digital pin 13. So 10, 11, 12, 13. And the MOSI or MSOI goes to 11. So we'll take another male to male. And when I look on my card, sure enough, MOSI is the next one. So that'll go to 11. Then MISO or MISO on the card, which was right. Make sure that's the right one. Yes, it is. That's right here next to MOSI. And that's going to go to 12. So plug that one in. IRQ says unconnected, so we don't have to even deal with that one. The ground GND, of course, will go to the ground on your Arduino. So I'm just gonna, and the ground is the next one. There was IRQ, and just like Dave was saying, mine go right down the same sequence as the chart. So I have to skip a hole, then put one in, and then send it to ground. And then we have RST goes to digital pin 9. So that's second last one from the end. And that'll go to digital pin 9 right there. And I'm just going to take a second, make sure I'm still in camera. Pretty good. Because I'm looking at the web page instead. And then the last one is the 3.3 volts that I had already plugged in on the Arduino. So now when I have those all plugged in, I'm just going to take my board and I'm going to unplug power from my Arduino before I do this, in case I touch the wrong pins, and I'm just going to hang that on there. So now what I have, as I kind of turn this, as you can see, it's just hanging loose on the pins, but I'm hoping that that tension is enough to make good enough contact for this to work, at least for a short time while we have the show. All right, and before I plug the power back in, let's go back now. I'll share my screen and we'll look at the, actually, I'll share my screen and look at the Arduino IDE sketch. Okay, so first part we read, if your reader supports it, this sketch program will read all the PICCs presented, that is multiple tag reading. So if you stack 2 or more PICCs on top of each other and present them to the reader, it will first output all the details of the first and then the next PICC. Note this may take some time as all the data blocks are dumped. So what they're basically telling us in layman's terms is within each of these cards, this being one, and if you had any more, they're saying you could literally stack these together, put them on the reader, and it will read both cards in order. And each of these cards, I think there's a chip in there as well as the antenna, a tiny little microchip that contains a bunch of data that is what's read and then used to uniquely identify the card as well as tell what action should be taken. Because, you know, it's like at a hotel when you go check in, they take the card, they stick it in something or other, and then they pull it out and hand it to you, and it's now all programmed with your room number so that you're the only one your door is the only one it should work on. So that's the unique data for that card. It won't work on any other door in the hotel. So that's kind of the same thing. All that data is stored within the microchip on here. So what we're going to do tonight, if this works, is read one of these cards and then read back what that data is on our serial monitor. And if it does read back, we'll know that we're successfully reading our card. So I'm going to go ahead at this point in time and just plug it in and upload the sketch. I think we have to make any modifications to the sketch at this time. Looks like there's not much to it. First time I'm actually looking at it. So we've got some includes, we've got some defines, then we've got your void setup and your void loop, and there's not much in the loop at all. So let's just go ahead and upload. And I never did check my port, so hopefully I have the right serial port. Otherwise, we're going to sit here and wait, and then it's going to bomb on me. We've never seen that before, right? Looks like it's making pretty good progress. Maybe it'll be successful. And tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. So while we wait for this, do we have any questions, Johnny, or comments that are worth sharing out on the YouTube site? Okay. So I did just get an email from JD. Just got home from camping trip, still unpacking. So maybe he'll jump in a little later yet, but. All right, what else can we do while we wait for this thing? Oh, there we go. It's talking to me now. Done uploading. Good deal. So next thing I'm going to do, without reading any more instructions, is just go ahead and start my serial monitor. See, okay, so mine, can you see what it says there? It says firmware version 0x0 unknown. Warning, communication failure. Is the MFRC 522 connected properly connected? Scan pick to see UID, SAK, type, and data blocks. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and scan that and see if it actually works. So I'll take my little blue chip, hold it over the top, and I didn't see anything happen. No dice. Now let me try my hotel card.
Try
Nothing happening.
Just for kicks, try putting a little pressure on that chip on the card.
All right.
And then try doing a reset.
Yeah, right, because there's a little red LED that lit up on the card, and it was dimly lit until I put some pressure on it, and it lights a little brighter. So I may have to end up going ahead and soldering that. Meantime, I'm going to do like you say. I'm holding pressure on it. I hit the reset button. You know, it doesn't look like it reset.
It did.
There we go.
Sure, it's a scan.
Oh, yeah. So now I put, oh, look at that. Put the card over it, and away she goes. Put the card over it, and there it goes again.
All right, now we're on something.
So what all this means, I have no idea. But it does mean that my RFID reader has read the little key fob. So now let me try the same thing with the hotel card. Right now nothing's happening, but I took my hand off, took the pressure off. So let me try the old hold it back
probably
down.
Probably lost its
so
information, so you may need to.
So I just hit the reset button on my Arduino. I'm pressing down on that now, and I put the card on, and there it goes again. All right, so now we know we're seeing some stuff here. Now I also know I'm going to have to solder that header pin on if I want to be able to use this. So let's go ahead and see if we can figure out what all that gobbledygook means here. First thing I'm going to do is go back to the top of the sketch and read some of these comments in here. Example sketch showing how to read data from a PICC, a PIC. When they're connected, load the sketch, then verify, compile, and upload it. Use tools serial monitor of the IDE. When you present a PIC at a reading distance, the serial output will show the ID, UID type, and data blocks it can read. Note, you may see many timeout and communication messages when removing from the reading distance too early. Oh, okay. So let's go back, bring up my serial monitor. You see how it starts reading blocks of data, then all of a sudden failed timeout and communication? That's because I only passed it in front of it. I really didn't hold it there too long. So just to make it easier to read, I'm going to make my serial monitor full screen. I'm going to push down on my tag again, reset the Arduino, go ahead and scan, and this time I'm just going to hold it. Okay, ready? Here we go. It's not doing anything.
Do the reset.
One more time. There we go. Whoops. Yeah, I've been doing the reset. I'm going to end up having to solder this, I think, because now I'm pressing on it and it's still not, unless I have a loose wire on my Arduino. Let me check those. And what I'm going to do here, I'll just try one more time. Okay, there's a nice bright red. Reset the Arduino. And scan. There we go. Oh yeah, see now I'm just holding it there. Look at all that data it's reading. Wow. So that's all the data that's contained in that chip right now. What it's all for, I don't know, but I'm sure there's plenty of information out on the internet that'll tell us if we go searching, and maybe we will tonight.
I'm guessing what it is. I'm guessing that's just showing you that the memory on it is essentially blank, and you can fill it with whatever you want.
Basically, I notice there's lines. If you look on the very left at the bottom here, there's a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 15. And they're calling that sectors. So there's 15 sectors, 63 blocks. So here's the word sector, block.
And 16
and these are
bytes
all,
per block.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like you're 16 bytes. So that's all a way of storing the data. So yeah, I'm guessing these things, and Andy, jump in here now. I think we had a little bit of a discussion just before the show when you talked about you bought a writer, but you didn't get it yet. I'm assuming that writer would be to fill all these blocks with whatever data you want. I'm guessing with 15 sectors, you could probably, or 63 blocks, you could probably put in 63 different types of variables.
Yeah, the goal is to write like for me, I have a bunch of glass capsules, RFID capsules, and I put in the bolster of the truck. So I'll write like class of car, car number, what road it's from, whether it's loaded or not, and you'll write those in real time. So when you push a car into an industry and head back out of the industry, you'll write back to that RFID that that car is now loaded. And from now on, that car will be treated as a loaded car until such a time as you write something back to it saying it's unloaded.
Well, that'd be a pretty cool application. I mean, and to simplify that just a little bit, you could put an RFID chip in your locomotive, identifying it with the road number, the road name, the type of locomotive, the horsepower, maybe how many cars it could pull. So yeah, that'd be really cool. I think you could go crazy with this.
All kinds of actions you could take based on that. So my first use of RFID is to say, well, this train has engine number 12 on it. Every time 12 trips an RFID, it'll move the cameras along. So when you're following the layout from the cameras above the layout, you'll just access that camera, and the cameras will just switch cameras to follow you. But RFID trips that.
That's kind of an interesting application.
But it's a lot easier than doing it with Bluetooth proximity. I've done Bluetooth proximity here in the house, which works better, talking to my phone. it's incredibly difficult to tailor or to tune. So, but RFID is so distance sensitive that it only trips if it's like right above it. So I've got my RFID sensor that I've only got one so far. I've got it carved out in the roadbed, shoved right up under the track with just a piece of 20 thou styrene or something sitting over it. So it's like right, it's just about under the rails.
So if there's anybody out watching in YouTube land, maybe a professor's on tonight, I don't know, but if anybody out there who's a Digitrax expert, I'm just curious what technology their transponding uses. Is that RFID? Is it something? No. Is it?
No, it's back over the rails.
It's back over the.
Yeah, it's back over the rails, and it's transmitting a. It's hard to say exactly what it is because
it's got to be reading. It's not just transponding. You have to have. It's not just in the decoder. I mean, you have to have it in the decoder, but I thought there's also some kind of transponding sensors of some sort you have to put out around the layout.
Yeah,
or tie into your block. I'm not sure if it's tied into electrically through the blocks. Maybe it is through the rail, but I'm just curious. That popped in my head while you were talking. It's like, okay, what technology is Digitrax using in their transponding?
It's basically their transponding is in traditional nomenclature. It's transponding the way that the FBI tracks a cell phone. It's essentially doing a very similar thing, but instead of tracking RF through the air like you do with a cell phone to find its location, you're RF tracking through the rails. How far down the rail are you? How much impedance is between you and this particular ID? So, which is a totally interesting system. And not that dissimilar from RFID in use, but in practice it works uniquely. One behind the other, yes. So you could pull a train across it at 50 scale miles an hour and it would trigger one after another just pretty quickly. Like, for example, since he's got his up there reading, take a couple cards and hit it with one and then hit it with the other. Hit it with one, hit it with the other. It's pretty quick.
Well, I'm just going to hold them both together because that's kind of what the instructions were saying before. Hopefully. All right, I'm going to have to.
Yeah, you're right. It should be able to read two at a time. We use this kind of technology in our warehouse management.
Now, there's a different sketch for that. The ultrasonic, that's the reason I mentioned about doing one and then the other. The RFID basic sketch reads one after another, it seems. So I think the code is written to be linear, or to be what in coding parlance you would call locking or blocking. It's blocking.
Okay, I'm holding two of them stacked together right now.
And see, it's blocking. At the moment that it reads that one, it's blocking it from reading the second, I think.
Well, as soon as I moved it away, or maybe I just delayed on purpose, and it started reading, you notice it.
Yeah.
It read sector 15, block 63, and then timed out the rest. So.
But I think if you hit it with one and then hit it with another, it'll read a couple pretty quick. But I think if we edit our code and make the code into a loop or some other function, there's multiple, but some other function that backgrounds the operation, I think it could read multiple at one time.
Okay, so the amount of time this is taking, like right now when I hold that over, now I'm just going to have to solder this because every time I just wiggle it a little bit, I have to reset. So see, if I just go ahead and hold it, let's say I'm passing over with a car like this. Oh, come on.
See, that's where
I'm going to have to solder this. I guess I'm going to heat up the soldering iron in a minute because I just can't continue to keep it functioning.
Notice though, you've got 1,000, you got 1K of data storage on there. That's the 64 blocks by 16 bytes. Is 1K of storage, and it takes a little bit of time to read a whole K. But if you store your data way at the beginning of the thing before
Yeah,
before you would
like
get the communication failures, you know, you could read 16 bytes. If you get all your data stored in 16 bytes,
right.
you could easily.
What I was going to try and demonstrate was, let's scroll way back to the top when I first started doing this. You notice this first time I swiped, it was pretty much the same as I would swipe at like a hotel or my badge at work. And you notice we only got 15 sectors, 15, 14, and 13 read in before I pulled it away and it stopped reading. So, you know, that would probably be about the time a car would pass over it at a fairly decent speed. You know, and the same thing here. I was just swiping it for a second or two and pulling it away. When I got down to the point where I read this entire block, I was holding it there like a full 5 seconds. Well, at 50 miles an hour, if you got data stored way down here, and let's say in this area, or even from here down, it's not going to read it unless it reads it, stores it. If it's just a serial monitor that's intentionally printing slow, but I don't think so. It would still end up printing if it read it already. So I'm guessing you'd have, like what Dave's saying is, store your data up here. Just even a momentary swipe, it's going to get a chance to read it. If you store it down at the bottom here, you're going to have to hold it a while to get it to read it. And that maybe that's just a function of these very cheap, you know, $1 22 readers. I'm just speculating here, but
well, the reader is probably adequate. We start getting to something when it comes to the cards. I've read some about there's a couple frequencies supported, different cards, and glass capsules, and all this other jazz. The actual card or the glass beads we put under our cards have a lot to say about how readable these things are.
The good part is you'll probably never want to fill this whole thing with data.
No.
I mean, even, you know, at the hotel, it's probably just the room number and maybe the date, the time and the date that it'll work between, you know, from today till tomorrow at 11 o'clock, you know.
And there's a key. There's a digital fingerprint, essentially called a hash, that's stored on a road key. People are really proud of breaking into rooms with by hacking RFID. That's a big thing on YouTube.
And then, you know, I'm guessing my same thing for my badge at work. It probably has my name, my clock number, you know, whether I'm still allowed access or not, and that's about it. You know, I'm guessing that's not more than, you know, about that much information stored on there.
It's not much.
Yeah, the trick is to minimize the amount of data so that you can read it with a fast swipe.
Right. Because, I mean, in 16 bits, you can actually store quite a bit of data.
Oh, yeah.
Can't you?
Sure.
I mean, you could probably store, you tell me, how much could you store in that one line?
Well, with that, you could store the car identification, you know, both the road name and the number. You could, in theory, have only one bit, record whether it's full or empty.
Yep.
You could have another piece of data that says, you know, what industry is this car destined to or bound to, so you know where to send it to. For an automated hump yard. All sorts of things like that.
What's the weight on the car? So we've been talking, some of us are playing with building a scale using a load cell.
You got to get me in on that one. I'm all in on that.
Yeah,
I need to know that.
We're building. We want to do. Of course, we're all going to do this stuff together. That's what we do. It's the benefit of us, our community here. But we're playing with some load cells and read that into an Arduino, and then have the RFID writer also setting under the scale. So as the car comes over and you read the scale back, times it by whatever multiple we need to take this many ounces and turn that into an actual scale equivalent of 58 tons or whatever, and then write that number back up to the RFID.
Yeah, see, there's nothing I'd rather be able to do than, as I'm coming out of staging or while it's circulating through staging, read the actual weight of the train so that when I get down to Helena and I'm ready to add helpers, I know how much power I need to add to get that up the hill.
Well, I want to store model information as well. Like, what is the actual weight of the car in in real weight. Like, is it 12 ounces or 13 ounces, 14 ounces? I'm going to store that. So
Well, that's what I was
right.
That's what I was talking about as
Yep.
far as the weight goes, not a conversion, but the actual
Yep.
scale weight. Not the prototype scale, but the actual model weight.
Well, see, the beautiful thing is if you store the actual weight, you wouldn't even need a load cell to actually detect the true weight. All you really need to do is say, you could do a scale with an RFID, and you store in this code what the actual weight is, or the actual weight of the car. You run it through a little calculation so it gives you the scale output on your on your LCD panel. But and so what it does is reads the actual weight of the car, reads the load versus empty, and it spits out something on the screen for you. So you don't actually need a load cell, maybe.
Music.
I'm wondering if that was Greg just recently joined. There we go, Greg.
Oh,
Thank you.
Greg joined us from an elevator nearby.
Oh, hi, Greg. I wasn't on my screen, so I didn't see anybody jump in. But
it's my wife's music playing in the background.
But if there's anybody else who wants to jump in, we can send you a link. Just shoot me your email, mrltrains@gmail.com. Send me an email, and I'll send you the link. We got room on for discussion tonight. So,
hey, Andy, by the way, getting back to the discussion. Looking at the data, what you might want to do is have at the very beginning of the data that you're reading.
Yeah.
That's where you would store, information like the current location of the car, the destination, loaded, unloaded. And then farther down in the data, where you'll have a chance to read the data more slowly, would be where you could store the permanent information. The model name, where you got it from, how much you paid for it,
sure,
things like
inventory
information. Yep.
Oh right. Yeah, because what you want to do is order them by priority. Order them by not just by how often you're going to read them, not by So put the manufacturer of the model's information down low. Stick probably the the car number right at the top. So because with an inventory system like JMRI, your car card, all you need to do when a train goes by is, or coming in and out of staging, all you need to do is record car number. That's all you need to grab is those few bits. And
hey, I'm gonna just interrupt you for 1 second. You guys continue the conversation. I'm gonna go get my soldering iron and fire it up. So I'm gonna let you guys talk a little to fill some airtime here. I'll be right back.
All right.
Also, based on something that Heili was talking, or Chris was talking about there as well, is what was that about? So you got to read them over like a short period of time, like when trains go by, to keep that inventory. All you need to do is grab the car number to do that and write it back to a database. And there's a pretty good sketch that does that. I'll find that and tell you in just a second. That I got it here.
You grab it and go and look up the data in the database to figure out where the car is supposed to go.
Yes, yeah, and that's one of the things many of us been talking about with this model railroad operating system that some of us are collectively building, is that it's JabRI does that. It's already there. So you have a car number. Oh, the thing I wanted to bring back to that Chris was talking about a couple minutes ago was how much data you can store in hex. Because that's hex. It's 16-bit nomenclature. So essentially, you can store roughly twice what you could store in decimal.
Yeah.
Twice to four times.
1.5 times, roughly. 1.5 times.
1.5. I was trying to think of a way to do that because you got some loss in there too. But you can store a little more than decimal. So you got to remember that reading across there, you read, across that top string, there's say 20 characters or so. You can store about 30 characters worth of data. So you got a card number that's 5 digits, often 4, 5, whatever, 5 digits. You're going to look probably at least 4 real digits there to store that.
Yep.
I'll do some math and see if I can get it into 3. But I know you can get it in 3 because it's only numerical data. Card numbers don't have a blah, blah, blah in it. So you could store that in a shorter syntax. And the way to think of this is if like some of the stuff we do with coding is in binary or in hex, which is 8, or in, there's all these all these numbering systems. Normal humans talk in base 10 or decimal 0 through 9. If the numbering system, like decimal, is a smaller numbering system, 0 to 1, then to write the same amount of data that you would write on your paycheck in this many digits or whatever, it's going to be a lot more numbers. But what we're doing here is 16-bit nomenclature with 0 through 9 and A through F.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. What have you got for comments?
All right, let me get back over here where I can read them. First one is not on subject, but I'm going to air it so that hopefully Caroline can get some answers. She wants to know, can anyone please direct me to some good weathering, aging, model glass windows tutorials? Obviously plastic windows, but yet I can't seem to find any. Carolyn, if you go to the YouTube Model Builders on YouTube or G+, you can post that, and I'm sure you'll get an answer there for that.
Check the Fine Scale show, too, because we've talked a lot about Windows and stuff on the Fine Scale show. So if she wants to hop in there and talk to us, we'll talk some more about Windows on the next Fine Scale show if she'll watch and ask us some questions.
All right. Now, I got Tab. He says another way to do this might be to have all your information in a database, then use the reader to quickly grab just the card ID, then ask the database for information on the card locomotive. This might be beyond the capability of the Arduino.
No, it'll run on an Arduino. Well, okay, no, it won't run on an Arduino, but it will entirely run on a Pi. So you can take a Pi, throw yourself a quick little database on there. By the way, this Model Railroad operating system that a group of us are working on, a fairly big group in our community are working on, just runs on a Pi, $35. You can take one of these and throw it out on your layout, running JMRI and everything else, and it can run that mechanism, that database. And it's pretty. We're not talking about becoming database administrators here. This is pretty trivial. And then all you got to read is those first couple bits. Just grab the card number. Now, I do like the idea, like Dave was saying, I like the idea of going ahead and writing more information into the card. What happens if you lose your database and all that other stuff? You would always have basic inventory information about that car really be in that car.
Yep.
So just like on the prototype, if you really wanted to know what was in that boxcar, you'd swing the door open and look through the boxes of potatoes to see what was really there. With this thing, you just read that card. It's the digital equivalent of swinging the door open.
So Andy, are you saying that you would have a card in every single car?
I'm putting a chip, actually I'll screen share it 1 second. I've got it open over here. These glass bead RFID, they are essentially the same things you buy for pet identification. So they're pretty cheap. Just saying, I'll screen share what they look like. But they are a little glass bead, and you store it underneath in the bolster of the rolling stock truck. So you store it. You put the glass bead in the bolster, like over here to one side in the bolster. And they're fairly small. I mean, they implant them into dogs with a little. I've got a buddy who's been using RFID for a number of years to control access to his house. He put it on his front door, and he bought the veterinarian kit and plugged one into his hand. That's a little gutsy for me, but he was. I'm not joking.
Just a little.
Good. It's good enough for your dog. It's good enough for you. Is that all you say?
It's medically viable. They do it. There's a lot of countries where they are tagging, and people are volunteering to tag. There are some professions where you have to be tagged for entry. It has to be physically in your. There's some security professions. I work closely with some government organizations related to some pretty sensitive security stuff. I'm not that long, and about a little less than half. Actually, I'm gonna find this page real quick. So we'll
Like an
Chris?
that.
Yeah, Chris,
Yeah.
since you're soldering, and just to let you know that if you're interested in that scale, send me an email. I'll send you the info for what you're going to need to build it.
Okay, that sounds good. You mean the speedometer?
No, I'm talking about the scale.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can send you both.
Yeah, that would be great.
So that's that glass bead beside of a grate of rice.
It looks.
Okay, so that's pretty good size actually then.
Yeah, actually, that there it shows.
I mean,
it's
it's
glued to the
for putting
bolster.
it under your skin, it's a good size, but for, you know, putting it on your car, you could stick that in just about anywhere in most cars. So
Yeah, well, you want it as close to the track as possible. So they generally recommend you put it. See, this one right here is down here on the bolster. That way, it's
okay.
right down there against the reader. You don't want it up through the floorboard, especially since there's weight in most floorboards. You want to get it right down there against the bolster. Now, there have been people who put them in, along the drive shaft of the wheel, or the shaft of the wheel assembly. But there's a problem with it not reading reliably if the wheel's turning over it. So that's the preferred place to mount it. It's right there.
I'm reading
Okay.
online right now where it says maximum read distance is 10 millimeters, so
Yep.
1 centimeter.
Yep.
Which is less than half an inch.
Yep.
Half an inch is a pretty good distance though on a rail car.
Yeah, about 5/16 of an inch, give or take, just a little bit more. It's whatever. It's 3/8. It's down there in the closer to a 1/4 inch range, and the closer you get, the more reliable and the faster. So for air laths, especially wanting to read cars going by, you want to get that thing down close. Remember, your track, your ties, and your rail are over 1/8 of an inch thick, and then by the time you put a piece of styrene on it and you got plastic and stuff in that reader, you've lost well over 1/8 of an inch, well over 1/8 of an inch before you ever get to the read head at the bottom of the wheel. So you need to get that thing down there as close to possible without. So putting it in the bolster, there's guys actually doing it. Mike Deverall, if you go check out his YouTube channel, he's already installing them on his layout now and reading into and out of staging every car, locomotive, train that goes in and out of staging.
I mean, one of the advantages with this, though, is could you imagine in a yard, you could actually literally build an automated yard?
Yes.
Where
And build switch lists out of your trade. So you could say, oh, I've got all these cars in the yard. Oh, you guys want to operate? Well, random me up some stuff and let's put some cars somewhere else.
Yep. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Well, that's why our thinking about building this model railroad operating system thing we've been talking about. Part of the reason we've been talking about that is it's always that you have JMRI and your DCC system and stuff and your turnout control, and you have your cars and switchless system, and they're completely disconnected systems for the most part. Even the JMRI operations is. But when you get into RFID says that those two systems need to couple.
Yep.
I'm just calculating. You said you can't have. You need to read it inside what 10 centimeters?
10,
Yes.
10 millimeter.
Millimeter.
10 millimeters?
Yeah, 1 centimeter or.
Yeah. Okay. So 10 millimeters is less than half an inch.
Yeah. It's
So
if you think more like 1/4 or 5/16, you're in the safe area.
yeah. So it has to be. So you got to put the reader. Pretty high.
I got a picture of how they're doing that on here and I did mine, what I've got, I've already put it in there. It's right up against the.
Can you make the pictures bigger though? Because I couldn't see the other picture where you showed where you had put the.
Sure. Yeah, I'll bring them over on this other monitor. It'll take me a second. Oh, there it is. I got some pretty good documentation on this stuff. Oh, there it is. This is awesome. And this what got me thinking about tying it to the scale stuff and not actually having a scale was this guy, these pictures here. So let's screen share this. All right. So this guy, let's see. I can't. Outsmart me, computer. So you want to shove it right up against the ties. Stick the reader in there. This guy's also doing some things by cutting the rails and stuff. So I'm just starting to wrap my head around that part about isolating the rail section. Because the power running through the rails can cause you some problems. But I see this guy he's cut it out there in front of a scale house, and I was like, well, this is the way to do this. Forget actually reading the real weight of the car. Let's just trip RFID and say that the car weighs that. You put the sensor in there, stick a piece of styrene right over top of it. So it's right up against the bottom of the flex track or track ties. And then he's put gaps in and fed this section of rail separately. I'm still wrapping my head around why, but.
Hey, Chris, can you go mute?
Sure. I thought I was, but
you're getting feedback.
Yeah, I'm having difficulties here, so.
Okay.
Well, if you make him mute, then when he sticks a soldering iron to his tongue to test it, we're not going to get the screen. That destroys a lot of the comic value.
Well, that's true. I know, but
RFID works reliably at any reasonable yard or switching speed. Works with metal bodies and weights. They put them on the plastic trucks, whatever. I'll drop a link to this. I got a bunch of resources on this, by the way. So this is just one PDF document that somebody used as a presentation that I quite liked. But there's some guys selling this stuff commercially in the modern space, but that's not my way of doing that. I want to. That's the best way.
There you go.
And then there's some guys selling this stuff commercially, like CTI Electronics, Modern Railroad Control Systems. That's where I order my chips from. They have these chips. I just ordered 10 of them. I wanted to experiment with them, but they got 100 pack too, so you can buy these glass chips, beads. Yeah, chips, whatever.
I wonder if it would be easier to attach them right to the axle of one of the wheels.
Well, there are people who've done that. The only argument with doing that is that as the wheel turns, that sometimes you don't get as reliable of read if it happens to be on the top edge of the axle as it goes into the reader. Although I just don't see the reader area is an inch square roughly.
Right.
That wheel's going to turn
That's
over
what I was thinking.
times.
That's what I was thinking. Well, actually, now the wheel probably only turn 1.5 times around that inch.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, they're about a 1/4 inch across, so it would turn 3 times a 1/4 inch. So it turn in 3/4 of an inch, it would turn one time.
Right.
So you'd think it gives you a lot less chance to get a valid read. And while I'm all about prototype whatever, I think that putting it there seems to make the most sense to me. And I think that's hidden enough to not bother me.
Right.
But you can also put it behind the truck or behind the side frame too. Well, Yeah, that's okay. It's not, as long as you don't rub, it's not going to hurt anything because it's turning with the truck. So I don't know. I don't know. It's worth thinking about. And you should put them on, like they say here, the B end. That's what has become common practice, to put them on the brake end, brake wheel side. But put them on the same side of all your rolling stock. And these guys have the, I mean, I'm going to build my own, but they sell complete solutions, including, so if you want to get into RFID, but you don't want to build it from scratch, you can buy a system that has the server. This has a Raspberry Pi, like we were just talking about, a Raspberry Pi that runs the database. That's $100. You could buy a Raspberry Pi for sub 50, or they're $35 plus a case. So $50. But if you don't want to build it yourself, or you don't have the knowledge, pay the $100. It's $100. And then you've got, you know, some reader shields that'll let you tie a couple readers in. They've got some stuff here that, and it's not that expensive. I should order a pack of 25. I just ordered a pack of 10 though.
I'm wondering if some of the other frequencies would give you either a greater distance so you could attach it to the bottom of the car as opposed to on the truck.
Yeah.
Or
I thought about using the cards. That's why I've got a handful of these cards, because I've got one of my banks use, actually most of my banks use RFID badges for physical security to get into the building. Oh yeah, sorry. Most of them use those cards. So I thought, what if you took one of those cards and chopped the sides off from it? I don't know if you can. I'm not
you'd
sure.
have to. I'd look real careful.
Yeah, I mean, I got a whole stack of the things, and I can
Yeah.
experiment. And if so, then you take one of those cards and just put it in right in the floorboard of this thing. And the cards read from a pretty good distance. I used to let myself in. I still do. I got a card in my wallet, and I just slap my wallet against that little thing by the door, and you know, it reads through my wallet with credit cards and everything in there. So,
Yep, same thing for me at work. I'm just trying to see if I can find something on RFID distance.
It's not very much, I know that. No,
Yeah, some
nothing.
of them.
the glass
Some of
beads
them are better than
worse.
others, though.
So the glass beads are the worst there are. They have the tightest sensitivity. So if we could make a card or some other type of chip, like the little dongles or something, work, not only are they cheaper to buy, they have a higher read proximity, and they store more data. Those chips, I don't think those glass chips store 100, or I don't think they store a whole K of data. Let's look at them and see.
Yeah, those chips probably are 512 bytes or something like that. But you really don't need more than just a couple.
Right.
Unless you want to use it as backup for your thing, just in case you lose your database, and you just rescan your cars, put them back in the database, you know?
Yeah, I like the idea of storing it. But even if you had 512 bytes, heck, if you had 256 bytes, you could
That'd
still
be more
store
than
basic information.
Yeah, that's more than enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 125 to 134 is usually short distance, 1 to 10 centimeters. You start getting into the higher frequency, 13.56 is 1 centimeter to a full meter.
Wow.
And see, now there's where you'd start having problems, and then from there the ultra high frequencies go 5 to 6 meters and larger. I know at work right now we have RFID readers that go around the tail end of a trailer,
Yeah.
and the guys just drive a lift truck right through the trailer, and it reads however many pallets are on there. And in many cases, they actually have the clamps of the lift trucks covering the tags, so they're reading through an inch worth of metal.
However, keep in mind that we actually do want these to be pretty doggone sensitive, because if you have a yard, you need to know what track it's on. So if it it needs to read on this track, but not read on a parallel track. That's why most people have favored this, even though it only reads this close distance. It also keeps you from having false positives or duplicates.
Right. You wouldn't want to read more than an inch and a half or 2 inches away, maximum.
Well, you got to realize it's a function of power. You know, this is a transmitter receiver setup, and it's all a function of power. In real life, they run the RFID tags on the real railroad, and they're many feet away from the tracks. And it's all a function of power. How much power is that receiving unit, I should say the transmitting unit, putting out that the receiver will pick up? You know what I'm saying?
See, RFID is kind of a funny business, so it doesn't have batteries or anything. Those glass beads will never degrade or decay. They will work in a million years when aliens come to see what we have left behind. Those RFID, that's a awful example, but the first thing they're going to want to do is come play with trains. So those RFIDs will still read. When the transmitter outputs power, it works off the power that the transmitter is putting in, and it responds back with some data. So you're actually powering it by asking it the question, "Who are you?" You're actually powering it at the same time, and that's why there's a time delay too, because you got to power that chip up. It's an 8086 processor, by the way, same processors that were out in the 70s in big desktop computers. They've shrunk that processor down. It's an 8086 CISC-based processor inside that thing.
Wow, didn't know that. That's
supposedly.
That's actually pretty incredible to think of what you can get in there then for power.
Yeah.
And to turn that on and read it and stuff like that.
Yeah. How's your solder project coming along over there? Oh, he's muted. Oh, it must be coming along all right.
Well, looks like he's got it on his board now.
Absolutely.
Trying it out. Hey, Chris, unmute. Let us know how it's going.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been talking away here and you're not hearing me. I was just saying, the reason I'm not showing you soldering is because I don't want you all to feel so dang good about yourself when you're done watching me.
Especially Brother Dave, right?
You know, me and soldering are just, like water and oil.
That's what you're doing.
So, by the time you got done watching me solder, you'd all be feeling really good about yourself no matter how bad you solder. So I just got to spend the money on a decent equipment. I think that's all.
That's critical. Having a good iron, clean tips, all that, that's critical. There's no question about it. The best solderer, if that's a way to say that, in the world can't do it if they don't have the right tools. But I can teach anybody to solder over a Hangout. That's, trivial. Now, I've done some complicated soldering. Like I've soldered under nitrogen. We soldered on satellite equipment that was going into orbit, so it couldn't have oxygen molecules in the solder bead. That's a little trickier.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you've soldered like in a glass chamber with little arms and stuff.
Fun.
Yeah, high reliability soldering in the military. That was fun. That was my favorite thing I did, probably. One of my favorite things. Not as exciting as jumping out of an airplane, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to see is looking through MR, and then you see people with a soldering iron or whatever in MR showing a soldering project, and they got all sorts of crud all over their iron tip.
Yeah,
and it's like, you have got to be kidding me.
But you need multiple irons, and you can buy them for $10. So I've got a little Weller $10 iron that I use for like scenery projects and for heating glue, activated contact cement, things like that. I've never touched solder with that iron. It's just a hot iron, not a soldering iron.
But get yourself a good Heiko or something like that for doing your actual soldering work.
But I've got a hot air soldering station too over here. I should have bought the Weller, but it was a doggone lot more expensive. So I got this Xtronic, and it does hot air.
Oh yeah, that looks nice.
So it has hot air gun, especially for doing like those things that Chris was just doing. You can just clip that board in here. Clip that board in, slide this thing up, and it blows air up underneath it to warm it all up. Then take this iron and blow air into it. and then push your solder around. You never have to touch anything to anything.
Huh.
And those are not that expensive these days.
No, they're really not.
I mean, that's
Well, I don't know if I fried my board or if I just have a bad wire in here that I have to go hunting for, but I get the red light. My board is lighting up, but I keep getting the
no
on
communication.
my serial monitor. It just keeps saying warning communication failure. Is it connected? Is there MFRC 522 properly connected? Every time I hit reset. So I don't know.
When you're soldering header pins, what I do when I'm soldering header pins is take a continuity tester and just tack across the pins and see if I can get any of them to dig that are side by side. That way you can see if you've got two bits of solder that are cutting across a trace. And then just take the back. Don't try to get tricky with a soldering iron to clean that up. Take the back of an X-Acto and just tick the solder out of that little gap.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Why make it hard?
All right. Well, that's a bummer because I was really hoping to try another test tonight.
Hey, you can straighten that up. Maybe next show when we get, or sometime down the road when we get back into doing something serious with this, I'll try to get my database server set up so we can actually try to write some data somewhere. And in a few shows when you're ready to come back to it, I should be in a shape.
Yeah, let's do that because, in fact, let's try it again for the next show.
Okay.
I mean, it's some pretty interesting stuff here, and I'd like to see, now that we know we can make one read, let's make it do something.
Okay. I'll get my database server. I've already got my reader in place, so all I need to do now is, and my writer should be here in a few days so I can write those custom values. I'll go ahead and get a Raspberry set up with a MySQL install so we can try writing it to a list somewhere. But that's
That would be
that's
cool.
a fairly simple task.
I mean, it's a good idea if you run it, but unfortunately, we're not doing Raspberry Pis on this show. But as soon as I heard him talking about that before, it's like, yeah, no, there it is. All you do is one quick ID and then refer to the database. No having to wait long enough to read the whole chip,
And we don't need to go into the Raspberry database part on here. We'll deal with the Arduino writing to that database. And anybody who wants to learn how to set that database and Raspberries up, because we're always playing with that stuff over in the standard Hangouts, anybody can come over there and ask a few of us questions about getting your Raspberry running. Because that's pretty easy.
Well, that's cool. I'll tell you what, since we have our speedometer expert, or did he jump out just now?
He quit on us.
Oh, he was here just a minute ago. I was going to ask him to
come on, Lloyd.
Come on back in. Come on, Lloyd. Come back in if you're there yet.
Did you play with your ultrasonic? Didn't you tell me you had played with the ultrasonic sensor?
I did. That was one of the very first things I did when I first got it.
I'm kind of fascinated by this thing about putting it at the end of my stub staging. So as a train comes barreling down there, I can say, oh, you're close enough to stop.
Well, I tell you what, let's try that real quick right now.
I got this one working because I started playing with it a minute ago. It's simple.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be difficult because this is what Andy's talking about. It's the ultrasonic sensor sends a sound wave out of one and receives it back in the other, and it can actually send distances. So I'm gonna set this down, go back to screen sharing, and see what I've got from. I think there was something built in Arduino. I don't think I really had to go out and look for anything, if I remember right.
I installed the ultrasonic library. I don't know if I had to do that, but that's what I did.
See my screen. I'm going to go back to the top. Sensors. Might be it. Yeah, there we go. This sketch reads a ping ultrasonic rangefinder and returns a distance to the closest object in range. To do this, it sends a pulse to the sensor, listens for a pulse to return. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe this isn't the right one. Let's see.
I could be wrong, but I was thinking the ping is the one that's the 3-wire, not the 4-wire.
Yeah, that's something else. So
there's a library. The there's a library. Well, I'm working on getting my camera above.
I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to show you. I think I've showed you this, guys, a while ago, but I'll show you again right now. Switch cameras. So what I did when I first bought my Arduino and got this kit was I bought a little box from Menards that compartmentalizes everything. But what I did is I took each of these items, because they really didn't say anything about them when you got the kit. And I kind of took each item one at a time, did a little research online, figured out what it was, and then put a little label on it so I would remember. So like right here is the one where I just pulled it out. It says HC SR04 ultrasonic sensor. You know, sometimes you actually found that information right on the part, and sometimes I had to just look at the website of where I bought it from, see what they called it, and then Google around for pictures until you found something that looked like it. But in this case, it says right on there, right in between there, says HCSR04. Really do. Now I'm going to go back to screen sharing. That's not screen sharing. That's wrong camera. Is I just go out to Google and then I would say Arduino CSR04 sketch or something like that. And typically you can find a whole bunch of stuff right off the bat. So here, before we even go any farther, the first one shows there you see your fritzing diagram and tells you a little about it. So I'll just go click on that, take a look. So SR04 ultrasonic sensor. Oops, come back. Whoa, that's some serious latency going on here. There we go. Has been used mainly for object avoidance and various robotic projects. It essentially gives your Arduino eyes, spatial awareness, and can prevent your robot from crashing or falling off a table. It's also been used for turret application, water level sensing, and even as a parking sensor. This simple project will use the HC-SR04 sensor with an Arduino and a processing sketch to provide a neat little interactive display on your computer screen. So let's take a quick look. Parts required: an Arduino, ultrasonic sensor, a mini breadboard, and a proto shield. Not essential, but makes it a bit more tidy. And then wires to tie it all together. So here's the fritzing diagram. So let's just see if we can throw this together real fast. Like, just gonna unplug all the wires.
Tie this up at some point with an LCD. In the short term, I could have an LCD on my staging diagram that's under the layout. And as I'm pulling a train down into staging, I could just read that value back on the LCD and say, oh, well, I'm an inch away, half inch away, stop.
Sure. And when I did this, I was just literally walking around the room. You know, first I would set it stationary and try and walk up toward it and walk away. Well, I could hardly read my serial monitor from that distance. So, but I'd go back and check and you could see it change. Well, then I started just kind of picked up the laptop and the Arduino and the sensor, started walking around the room. And as you walk up to a wall or a door or something, and just watch the number get it telling it reads off in feet on the serial monitor.
Accurate. It
Yeah,
seems to be pretty accurate. I laid a ruler down in front of it and moved my head to log the metric ruler because it outputs to the default for this sketch I'm using, this example sketch I'm using, it reads back in centimeters. So I laid a centimeter ruler back and stretched my head, and it's just hitting off my head. It's pretty spot on.
Okay. So if as you see from this fritzing diagram, it's just 4 pins on the sensor. You can go ahead and plug those in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to point the sensor away from the breadboard. I'm going to put it on the edge of the breadboard as far over as I can and point it away. Then I'm just going to run my jumpers. In fact, I'm going to take maybe this little mini breadboard, and then I can probably set right on top of your, I think that's why they're talking about a prototyping shield. If you guys have one of those and know what it is, it plugs right on top of your Arduino and basically it has a mini breadboard right on it. So what you could do is mount that sensor right on top of the Arduino. And if you had a little battery pack, you could take it all over the place with you. You just wouldn't be able to do the readout, I guess. So I'm just going to take my mini breadboard, stick the sensor on there, and run my 4 wires per this fritzing diagram. So as you can see, the one to the left is called VCC. That's your voltage. You can see the red wire going out to the 5-volt pin on your Arduino. So that's the first one I'll do. So it's VCC to 5-volt Arduino. Then the next one is called, when I look on mine, it's called Echo. One.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, he's back.
There's your speedometer
Okay.
expert.
Yeah, so we'll get to that. We'll get that in a minute now that we. So mine is just a little bit different than this one. Oh, okay, I'm reading it backwards. That's why. So VCC, there's, yeah, the trigger is next to the VCC. So starting from the left to the right on this screen, it's hard to read for me, so I'm sure it's impossible for you guys, but this one right here at the very left is VCC, and as if you follow straight down, it's the red wire that goes to 5 volts. The next one over is called trigger, or TRIG on the board. And that one is going to go to, as you can see, it says green wire here, and it goes to pin 8, digital pin 8, which is the first one on that bank from 8 to whatever, this new bank right here. Then the next one is echo. That's the yellow wire. That runs to 7. So I'll plug that one in real quick. You know, after every show, I tell myself I got to get online, buy a bunch of new jumper wires. And another show comes, and I still haven't done it. Finally, the last one is just your ground. You can see the one to the right here is the black wire, and that just runs to ground. And we should be ready to rock and roll. 4 simple wires. I'll leave that up just for a moment, and if anybody needs more time, just yell and I'll come right back. But I'm going to just take a look at the sketch quick. You can download this from the Arduino IDE site. We also know we can just copy and paste it though. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, but you might need the library with that. Or did you?
Yeah, that's true. Let's see if they need a library.
I'm using the ultrasonic library. You can
Yeah,
install it with the library tool.
So let's see if it even tells it needs to load a library. I don't see any. I think all the calculations are done right in this sketch. That doesn't load a library. So we should be good to go, but well, let's just see. If you look right here, you can download the Arduino IDE. Oh, IDE, we already have that.
Oh,
I thought it meant the code, but it doesn't. So I'm just going to go ahead and scroll down and copy this entire sketch. If it'll keep going. Up at the bottom here, number 36, and then my, let's see here. No, there's a lot more to it than that. Well, let's try the reverse psychology. I'll start at the bottom and highlight going up. I got my Google screen sharing little messages blocking me from being able to go down further. So just start at the bottom and go to the top, highlight it all, Control C to copy it to your clipboard. IDE, and just close this one out. I don't want too many open. It slows me down. L new. Just highlight everything and hit delete. V. to paste, or whatever your favorite method is. Yeah, I always do. I learned the hard way is to go down to the bottom and make sure you got one of these bad boys hanging out at the bottom. Curly brace to close the whole sketch. If you don't have that, you know you're going to fail, and you didn't copy everything. So
It'll get you every time.
Curly braces,
yeah.
and semicolons.
Up and down here, loop, void setup and everything else. Then I go back one more time and look at the website real quick, make sure it looks about the same. Then I know I copied and pasted everything. I'll clear that so you can help read it better. So there's the void loop. Ends with delay 50. If I go down to the bottom of my sketch, it ends with the ping sketch. Let's go to the other one. Ends with delay 50. So I should, pretty much means I copied it all. So I'll just, whoops. I'll just go ahead and, because it's going to make me do that before I can upload anyways. Default name, because I probably won't keep this sketch. And I'm plug in. Now, in reality, this would take about half this amount of time because I'm not, don't take the time to demonstrate it. But, once you've done this, and I really, to be honest with you, haven't had hardly any Arduino time other than on the show. So, if you can still, we're getting to the point where you can do something this quickly. I mean, in a matter of 10 minutes, we found a sketch, put it together, and we're uploading the sketch already. And if it all works right, in about 2 minutes, I'll be walking around taking distances. What I'll do is I'll bring up my serial monitor, show you guys that, share it with you on screen, and then I'll set the distance sensor and just start walking back and forth from it to see how let you guys see how the distance changes. So.
Yeah, and I'm just holding my hand in front of mine, but what I think, I'll put my serial monitor up for a second too. What I think is going to work better is if I set this ultrasonic sensor in a vertical position, so that when it reads down the track, I'll put one in front of each track of staging, so there'll be 4 tracks stub-ended, and put them down here at the end. As the locomotive approaches, it'll fire off a sensor. I've got to read and average those out because they do drift a little bit, so that I can say, okay, when it gets to anything under 10 for more than one hit, because right now I'm reading every 100 milliseconds. If it reads anything under 10 for more than a couple pings, cut the power.
Something doesn't seem right here. It's not showing a progress bar or anything. It's just stuck saying uploading to I/O board. I'm going to hit save and hit the upload again and see what's, there we go, compiling sketch. That's much better.
Yeah, that's what you want to do. Have you tried any of the other IDEs, like processing?
No, I haven't.
It's not that dissimilar, but
I'll tell you, I have used Visual Studio.
oh yeah, I've heard of people doing that. I've been doing some of mine directly on the Linux console of a Raspberry Pi, because you can do it straight in the serial console.
Yep. No, I use that. One of the reasons I do that is I'm used to Visual Studio from work.
Yeah.
We have that, and then there's what do we call this? Let me open up Visual Studio. There's an add-in that you have to add in. Visual Micro, it's called.
Oh.
And Visual Micro is, you can actually do line-by-line debugging in there, Andy.
Wow, I need to get, and that's free, by the way, for anybody who's interested. Visual Studio, the basic version, is free to anybody.
It's called get the Community Edition.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I was thinking it was called Express, actually, but yeah, Community.
Yeah, that's an old term.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a few old terms in my head, so.
Me too. Punch cards.
Oh, you better believe it. I still think back to Fortran F77 math sometimes. So
Oh, don't do that to me.
oh, it's not that
All
I'm
right.
happy about it.
So we got it set up. See my thing, it's doesn't look like it's scrolling, but it actually is, I think.
Yeah, if you got auto scroll set on it, yeah, it's auto scrolling. It's hitting there.
So it's just, I'm moving my hand back and forth. It doesn't seem to be doing anything at this point in time other than displaying a -1. So let's go back and read.
You might have the trigger and the echo reversed.
Okay.
That, I mean, just
So,
possibly, that would possibly cause that particular.
so echo pin on 7 is what it says there. And
Yep. Echo.
oh, I know. I see what I did. I completely whiffed when I put the ground wire in. I put it next to at the other end. So it was in a dead row, so it didn't do anything. But all right, now let's see what happens. That oh, my whole thing went dead now. There. All right, let's try that again. I am just not having any luck tonight. So power, 5 volts to VCC. There we go. Trigger. Off the screen right there, you can see pin to 7 and trigger to 8. Oh, look at that. Oh, define LED pin 13, so that must be doing something too if we read carefully later on.
Oh yeah, my LED, I didn't even see that until you said that. My LED's flipping out every time it changes. If it stays the same, it's pretty calm, but as soon as it starts drifting much.
Sure, that's just to show you that it's doing something, I guess. So
yeah. So right now I'm at a solid 4 and 5, so I'm not getting much. As I start drifting around much, that LED starts flipping out.
So well, Dave, do you have one of these? Are you goofing around with yours too, or?
No, I actually didn't have one of those. I don't think I have.
Okay, so I just reset mine, and now I see my RX is going crazy. Light. If it has to do with the range.
Yep.
Because you know what? If you look on the front side, one says T and one says R.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Let me share.
Steve. That's right. I hadn't looked at that.
Right. So I'm going to stop sharing and let everybody else see what I'm talking about. Get back to my camera screen. I got too many windows open now. There we go. So when I set this up, basically, like it said, if there's 1 to 5 volt, the one next to it is trigger, and that went to pin 8. Echo, and that went to pin 7, and then lastly I grounded. And on the front of this, what I'm talking about is there's a little letter R right here, and on the opposite side there's a T. So that tells you this one is the one that's sending out the sound wave, and this is the one that's receiving it. And if you watch the blinking LEDs, okay, this one way down here, let's get some kind of a pointer for you. The one way down here is that pin 13 that always lights up. This one says RX, which means receiving. This just means power on your Arduino. But if I cover up this one called transmit, you see that one LED lights up. And if I cover up, it does. So it means it's definitely doing something. Up. Now it's still on, and then it goes off. So as you goof around.
Mine's not lighting up as much as yours is. Either way, I don't know why.
Back and look at the sketch, because when I just was glancing through that sketch, it said something about trigger distance. If I can find that again, or long duration. So I'm going to go back screen share real quick.
Yeah, let's see your code. My code's really simple. I mean, it's like 10 or 11 lines.
Catch you're using?
I'm using the
Or did you download the one where he's...
I'm using the ultrasonic simple example. Just for fun.
So I'm just going to go back to that website real quick and let's read what it's supposed to do.
Because once you install that ultrasonic library, like I installed, it has these samples in there, a couple of them.
So we did this the true red-blooded American male way, and we just
Yes,
looked
sir.
at the picture, uploaded the code, and went to see what happens instead of reading all the instructions. So now let's go read the instructions.
That's why you're getting a -1. It has a maximum and a minimum range. So if you're above or below that minimum range, you get a -1 output.
Right, that's what I was guessing, but it doesn't even really say on here. It just gives you some more code.
Let me show you this bit of code that I've got. This is this bit of code I'm working with. It's all it's only that, you know, plus part of that's confidence even. So there's just not that much to it. And all it's doing is saying, here's the ultrasonic sensor on 12 and 13. Open up a serial monitor to print into that whatever comes off that ultrasonic distance read using this ultrasonic library. So, and then delay, and it's by default it delays to 1 second, but it's more fun to play with if you speed that up a little bit.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through this, and you guys we'll all read this together, and based on what we've learned in the past. Okay, define echo pin 7. Define trigger pin 8, so it's calling those, giving to those pins, echo pin to pin 7, trig pin to pin 8, LED pin to 13. Then it says max range equals 200, but it really doesn't tell us 200 what's the unit of measure, you know. Minimum range 0, and then we have duration. It's duration used to calculate the distance. So we'll see how those come into play as we read farther down. So here we get to our void setup next. Here's where we begin our serial monitor, the serial.begin mode. The trigger pin is an output, so the one we named trigger pin 8 is going to be an output, and echo pin is going to be an input, and the LED pin is going to be an output. So that's our typical void setup type stuff, telling the pin what it's going to be. Loop is going to happen. The following trig pin was used to determine the distance of the nearest object by bouncing sound waves off of it. Delay in milliseconds 2. Right trig pin high, delay in milliseconds 10. It's turning off the trigger pin for 2 milliseconds, turning it back on for 10 milliseconds. Pin low, duration equals the pulse in, echo pin high.
It's reading it back.
So this is, and it's calculate distance equals duration divided by 58.2.
Yeah, so it's reading the response back on that echo pin, and it's writing that to a variable duration, and then doing the calculation and spitting out distance.
Yep, and here's the answer to what we were looking for before. Calculate the distance in centimeters. So that 200 is centimeters. So I should have been able to calculate something from that. This is,
if you look at that next slide down too, or a couple lines down, it says serial print in -1. That is send a negative number to computer, turn the LED on to indicate out of range. So for whatever reason, it thought you were out of range. So if you went up that range to higher than 200, you may see the issue with that.
because actually, if I go ahead, I'm going to, just for fun, I'm going to say out of range dummy. think it needs to be a value, right?
No, it's whatever. It's plain text.
Why
Say
don't you
range them.
why don't
Just
you actually
print
print out the
distance.
number?
Yeah, print out distance.
Well, this is for when it's out of distance.
Right, but you can see what number it's getting.
Yeah, print out the distance itself.
Well, I
Put
think
another print line in there.
what
that
it's
says the
trying to
distance.
say is it'll print you a distance if it's in range, and it'll give you the error message if it's not in the range. But you can change the range too.
Yeah,
Everything we could get rid of the range altogether.
but I like.
We're just telling you to print the actual distance so that you know what it thinks it is.
But I like
Right.
the idea of even having that error message that says something like -1 or whatever. But you probably need to crank that range up above 200. Crank that up to 1,000 or something.
Well, 200 centimeters, that's plenty. I mean, I was putting my finger right in front of it.
Oh yeah, I don't know what that is. I think
Even
that's
200 millimeters, even 200 millimeters is 10 inches. So
yeah, but it's not. It's calculating that back based on an audio delay. It's
I
not.
apologize. It's 4 inches, not 10, but give or take. But yeah, so that should be 40 inches at 200 centimeters, give or take.
Yeah, but it's just that range is not an actual measurement. It's just a delay in time. It's like 200 microseconds because it's setting that range before it ever calculates the distance.
Okay, let me just finish. Okay, it's done uploading. I'm just going to see what happens real quick. Oh, there we go. Now I got distances and an occasional out of range dummy. So I don't know what it's picking up, but
And that's all I needed was my.
actually, when I put my finger in front of it, right now it's doing the out of range dummy.
Oh, it's too close.
Take my finger off, and there we go.
And that's all I needed was for my Arduino to call me a dummy too.
I always laugh. This guy used to come to meetings with his, I want treasurer in a club I used to belong to back in the day of briefcases. And on this briefcase, he had a big red arrow and it said up dummy on one side of it. So, so he wouldn't do the old set it upside down and open it up upside down and everything falls out, you know? I never forgot that up dummy with the big arrow. So he always opened it the right way.
Well,
Anyways,
I wonder how many times he had to dump it out before he decided that sticker made sense.
yeah. Oh, this is interesting. Look at what it's doing right now. I just turned it toward me, and I'm not moving, and yet every other blip. Now I put my hand in, so it must be just on the edge of outer range.
Yeah. And you might need to slow it down a little bit. I'm reading every 100 milliseconds. You're reading every 50 milliseconds.
So my hand right now is about a foot away from it. Oh, and it's still, if I put that hand a solid foot, 8 inches, 10 inches away, I'm getting those readings. As soon as I move away, I'm starting to get an error. If I take my hand away completely, bouncing it off my chest at about 1.5 to 2 feet away, it's what it's doing right here.
It's all over the place. It's spattering audio all over the place.
Well, it is, because you notice it's ranging all the way down from 59 to 70 to, and it's still throwing out ranges right in the middle of every that.
See, mine seems to be pretty stable. Like right now, mine's sitting there reading 8, occasionally 9, but 8 or 9 milliseconds or 8 or 9 centimeters. It's pretty accurate at that. When it gets up above 20, it starts really starting to suffer in accuracy, or it jumps around a lot.
But I think it's a function of the programming and not so much the sensor.
Yeah, that may be true.
Because I was literally, the sketch I did when I first used this way back in December around Christmas, it was during Christmas break when I first got this thing. I was up at my son's house and I brought this along for something to do when later in the evening when everybody else was going to bed. But I was walking around and I was sensing walls from like 15 feet away, and quite accurately I grabbed a tape measure and started measuring stuff, and it's not the sensor, it's got to be in the programming. So let me stop this. What you were talking about a few minutes ago was changing the duration.
The delay on the bottom.
or the delay on the bottom. This 50 milliseconds.
Yeah.
I'm reading
To
every
the next.
100 right now, but mine by default, the example sketch I'm using read every 1,000 milliseconds or every 1 second. But
Yeah, I'm going to try that just to see if I get more consistent readings. So
it does seem to be pretty stable there.
So I changed that from 50 to 1,000, and I just hit save. And then I'll go ahead and upload. Nice part is this goes pretty quick now that I've once. It should be done momentarily, and there it is. So now I'll switch back to my monitor just to clear the screen. There we go. So now we got every second we got a new number coming in.
You're still a dummy, just a little less often.
You know what's funny is I'm just sitting here right now, barely moving. I mean, I got my hand in front of it at about 8 to 10 inches again.
And that would
So
be
let's
about
see,
right.
17 centimeters. Is that about right? Anybody?
Yeah.
All right.
It's about.
Well, 25 centimeters would be
1 inch, roughly. Oh, 2.5
10 inches.
centimeters. 2.5 centimeters is roughly an inch.
Yeah.
Right. No, it looks like it's just plain stopped.
So you're at 17,
Oh no, it's just this is dead accurate now to the point it doesn't look like it's moving. So
you're at 17, pretty stable at 17 centimeters. That is 6 5/8 of an inch.
that's. Oh, I'm gonna say I'm a little farther than that. So.
But it's drifting upwards, 21/18.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna grab a tape measure just for kicks.
Andy, you might like this sensor here. If you're going to put it on staging tracks, it's more of a laser beam.
Oh, that's awesome. Time of flight. Yeah, I've seen somebody talk about these, but I hadn't seen it.
I was thinking about using one of those to have, as the train runs over it. It's a little pricey, but
yeah, I don't need that.
Pretty interesting.
Well, I don't need that many. I'm going to have 3 staging tracks under the layout, 3 staging tracks in the other room. So I would need 6 of these to detect the endpoint. And I was originally just going to put an infrared sensor at the end of the track. But wouldn't it be nice to say, oh, I've hit 400 millimeters, start slowing down. I've hit 200, slow down a lot more. I've hit 100. All right, bring this thing to a stop before you hit 50.
Yeah, it's running on a feather there, but you could make that an Arduino.
I like that.
This thing is very accurate, actually, because I'll show you the setup in a second. But if you look at my screen, it's just basically scrolling 26, 26, 26, 26. In centimeters, that's just a hair over 10 inches. Because 25.4 would be 10 inches. Because 25.4 millimeters is an inch, that much I know. So I'm going to now switch back and show you the setup to show you how accurate that thing actually is. A second to get back to make sure I'm showing you the right thing. There we go. So there's my sensor. The tape measure is, I just kind of put the edge of the tape measure right under that. And if I come down to here, 10 inches, I've got it pointed directly at that tape measure. So right here is where it's bouncing off of right now, down below it, because it's interesting because there's if you look at from the side profile, there's a tapered edge coming out that's actually going toward the sensor. Well, right down here where it's 10 inches, it's about the same height as where the sensor is. And the fact that it's showing me 26 and not something less means it's not picking up this tapered face. It's actually picking it up down here on the flat portion. Tip that sensor up a little bit. I'll start reading off this tapered face right here and actually give me a shorter reading. Camera work here, but that tells me if it's pretty consistently hitting right down in this area, not farther up. So Andy, that might be of some interest to you for the accuracy of the cone, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, what
it seems to be critically important.
So I'm gonna just get this monitor again. So yeah, just tipping it up that little bit has now changed me to 25s. Tip it up one more time after I set up the camera here. I gotta turn off my monitors. Okay.
Hey, Greg,
So
I found
I'm
those kind of flights for us.
I'm just gonna get out of the way, Mr. Cable. So I'm gonna aim it up even higher to try and hit it up farther here, because this portion is actually almost hanging over the 9.5 inch mark. So the top here is a 1/2 inch closer to the sensor than the bottom is. So let me just tip that up a little bit and see how much that brings the reading down. Okay, which one is it? That's the transmitter, so I want to look at the receiver too. Yeah, it's hanging at 25 pretty well. Maybe I move it over a little bit.
Well, you could calibrate
That's
it,
not.
Greg. You know, you could always adjust for a little bit in the code to adjust for calibration.
Right, but I'm just trying to figure out how sensitive or how is this broadcast. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys are fishermen and have a depth finder, but if you do, you know that transducer, it's the same thing. It's just sending out sound waves and receiving it, but the angle of the cone, so to speak, that comes out of it, the accuracy and at what depth. A narrow cone will give you won't see much in shallow water, but it'll give you a much deeper reading, where the wider cone will cover a much greater area in shallow water, but you won't get readings at great depths. Once you get to 100 feet, the signal dissipates so much.
Yeah.
So more focused beam will cover a greater distance but less area.
What higher fidelity too, and with what we're doing with this stuff, we want a fairly focused beam.
So most of the new transducers on fish finders nowadays are dual band. They have like 83 millihertz and 200 millihertz, or megahertz, whatever. And so they're actually covering two different. One covers the broad band for shallower waters, and one depth, and it combines the readings into one good reading. So they've actually gone to multiple band frequencies with different shaped cones coming out of it. So I'm just curious what the cone shape of these things is. Is it narrow and focused, or is it wide and doesn't go that far? So, all right. Well, we got 2 hours in already. I think we're going to call it a day on this one. It was kind of fun, turned out to be, even though the RFID went bad on me. I'm going to try and get back on the horse next show, see if I can get this thing working. And maybe by then, some of you guys give you 2 weeks to go ahead and order one. This is like Dave was saying, the Banggood will get you the stuff in a week, or maybe less if you're lucky. So now you got 2 more things.
AliExpress is another one. I order from a whole lot of time. I order from AliExpress because they're incredibly cheap, like dirt cheap. It's not fast, but it's incredibly cheap.
Okay.
Hey, Andy, you may want to post where you can get RFID readers or writers. The writer you found cheap, because those I think are probably one of those things personal need anyway, is a writer.
Yeah, I guess reading these cards is one thing, but being able to read unique data on them is another thing. Because right now, with what we learned tonight, we could create a sketch where once it reads that card, that's enough to trigger an event, like or turning on a light or whatever. But what you want to end up doing is being able to put unique data on there, so when you read it, you know, it could trigger a unique event or read in unique data. You know, we could connect it to an LED and let it tell you what the car is as it goes past every time.
Yeah, the one I ordered was, and they vary a lot. Like you could buy RFID riders that are $200. There's plenty of those. You look at a hotel; those are $200. The one I ordered from Alex, AliExpress, is $16. Pretty cheap.
Wow. So what they're actually talking about for everybody out there is, if you remember when I first scanned in my card and there were the 15 sectors of code, there was big blocks of code. That allows you to write code into those blocks. So right now they're basically empty, with the exception of maybe a unique ID for the tag. But other than that, there's no data in there. So if you want to start storing data, like Dave and Andy were talking about earlier, that's what you're going to need to do, is buy a writer that allows you to write to that chip. So, all right, guys, great show. Thanks for your participation, and I look forward to the next one. Oh, I see Andy. I'm going to let Andy share this real quick before we...
That's a little USB writer that's got this little Windows utility. So you could go in and put a couple of digits in there, card number, stuff like that. You know, I mean, some of this stuff sounds like it's complicated because we're, you know, that's the point of this Arduino workshop, is that we work together to figure this stuff out. So you kind of get to hear the inside baseball of us figure this stuff out. But this is not that. It's not horribly complicated.
It's just different.
It's just different. Yep. And if you wait till the next show when we show the details of how we made it work, if you just take those things, it won't be that hard.
Did you have a question for me, Chris? Here I am.
Yeah, early on, earlier I didn't realize we went this long. I was gonna, just talk about your speedometer that you built a little bit, but let's do that at the beginning. And will you be available for the next show at the beginning of the show?
When is it?
First week of July, first Wednesday.
Yeah, it should be.
5th of July. Okay,
we'll
have you just talk about your speedometer and maybe show it off a little bit, and then we'll get a parts list posted, and that'll give everybody a month to order up parts, and then on the first week of August we'll go ahead and start building one.
Well,
and then after we do that, we'll go back into the RFID a little bit.
Okay, because I ordered 5 sets. Like if I was going to build 5 speedometers. It's because the one I already started building, I already started wiring stuff already. So it's going to be pretty hard for me to show you something while... Well,
that's fine.
And the thing is, my pieces are not coming in until about the 15th of July. So if you want, I could just mainly just say what are the pieces you need, and from there... Take it from there.
Well, I'll get a hold of you on a offline hangout or something one of these nights, and we'll go through it and make sure I got a good part list that I can post up. And then, but I just thought if you wanted to talk about it, or just if you had to demonstrate something you could demonstrate, it doesn't have to be working on the layout. Just kind of show what you put together as a preview, or not. It's up to you. Doesn't matter. And then we'll,
at the beginning of next show. At the beginning of the next show, no problem.
Okay. And then the remainder of that show, we'll goof around with RFID again, and then the August show we'll start building a speedometer. And if we need to, we'll have a special show or two after it. If we get far enough along that we just need a little bit to finish it, we'll just have a special show to finish it up instead of waiting another month.
Mm-hmm. Well, it won't. I mean, it wouldn't be that complicated. It's just that if you want to go into the details of the sketch, then you probably lost me there, because I just copy and paste and it works. So,
which is fine. And then, if it works, then we know it'll all start. And then after that, we can maybe play around with custom mods after everybody has one up and running. So,
Yeah, I know that Andy's been working on trying to shrink the sketch because the sketch is basically you could pick your scale. You could pick if it's miles per hour or kilometers per hour. You could pick if you want to do we call it around. If you want to go around your layout 5 times,
Timer.
lap count.
Oh, yeah.
So, do you need all that? I think we should go just with the basic, the scale.
Yep.
We'll do it in HO scale, but the end scale, all you have to do is change a value. That's all there is.
Edit the sketch. Yeah, edit the sketch and upload a different sketch for it versus HO. The best results I found have been to spend some time learning Russian. That's probably good for a future anyway. So but I found a sketch that's largely in Russian that's really good. So when we come back,
That's the one I was looking at as the one we're going to build, but I was trying to find a way to simplify it. So we'll get together and talk about that. Not just the sketch, but the whole thing.
Me too.
You know.
Okay, we just have to meet in one of those Arduino hangouts.
Okay, Johnny, do you have some comments or questions?
No.
No. Okay.
No, we're good.
All right. Well, let's put the kibosh on her, and we'll catch you guys again July 5th. And thanks for coming out and checking this out and working along with us if you were. And to that, I'll turn it over to Johnny.
I agree. Jeez. You do it to me every time. You have to start coughing when you say goodbye.
Get you all choked up.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, it was another good show there, Chris. Appreciate it. Yeah, too bad about the RFID, though. But that happens. Anyway, go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. There you can check on the schedules for the Tuesday, Wednesday, and the Saturday live show. Tuesday and Wednesdays are at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern. Thursday and Saturday are at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Also, be sure and click on the eMag while you're there and sign up for email notifications when it comes out. JD and his team do a great job of producing that magazine. It is a freebie, so, and it's got some really good content in it. So be sure and check it out. Alrighty, with that said, y'all have a good week. What's left of it? Oh, we got another show, Tuesday show, coming up on 27th, next Tuesday. Chris is rather busy this month because that's his layout tour. If you hadn't forgotten, Chris. So we'll see you Tuesday night for Chris's layout tour. Y'all have a good evening.